confidence. Gohan wanted it more than anything, the kind of quiet, unshakable confidence that doesn't need to shout to be heard. But everywhere he looked, he saw people who seemed better, smarter, stronger, while he felt invisible, stuck in his own shadow. That was until he found the elixir. And when he drank it, everything changed. His eyes opened to a truth he'd never seen before. This is the story of how Gohan transformed himself, and how you can too. Part 1. Gohan's reality, the voice of doubt. Gohan's days blurred into each other, each one an echo of the last. He would scroll through social media, a parade of success and perfection mocking his stillness. Friends bought houses, started businesses, and shared victories, while he stared at the same four walls of his tiny apartment. Every time he thought about making a change, that voice in his head crept in. They're better, smarter, luckier. You're just you, stuck, broke, and invisible. The voice was relentless. It reminded him of every failed attempt, every time he tried to do something different and fell short. It whispered that he wasn't cut out for greatness. How could he be? Everywhere he looked, people seemed leagues ahead, better dressed, more articulate, more confident. He felt like a spectator in his own life, paralyzed by the fear of failure and the crushing weight of comparison. Even in his favorite escape, gaming, the voice found him. Playing an MMO called New World, he chopped trees and completed quests, immersing himself in the virtual grind. But as his character leveled up, he couldn't help but wonder why he couldn't do the same in real life. Why couldn't he grind, build skills, and progress? The thought haunted him, but he quickly pushed it aside, burying it under more hours of gameplay. One night, as he mindlessly chopped wood in the game, he played a random podcast in the background. It was an interview with Tim Ferriss, and one line caught his attention. Life is an MMO. You can level up your character by learning, building habits, and taking small steps every day. The comparison was so obvious it hurt. In the game, he didn't expect instant results. He knew leveling up took time and effort. But in real life, he expected change to happen overnight. Suddenly it clicked. He didn't need to fix everything at once. He could start small, just like in the game. For the first time in years, Gohan saw two doors before him. One led back to the comfort of his gaming chair, the endless cycle of escape and stagnation. The other led to something unknown, but possibly better. A door marked potential. That night, Gohan made a choice. He closed the game, opened a notebook, and wrote down one goal: level up in real life. Part 2. Finding the anchor. Gohan knew he couldn't overhaul his life overnight. The door to potential was open, but walking through it required more than wishful thinking. He needed a starting point, a foundation to build on when everything else felt uncertain. That's when he remembered something he'd heard in an interview with The Rock. In life, you need an anchor, something that keeps you grounded when the storms hit. The idea struck a chord. For The Rock, the gym was his anchor, a place where he could work out frustration, find clarity, and regain control. Gohan had never been particularly athletic, but he understood the appeal. The gym was straightforward, no pretense, no distractions, just effort, sweat, and results. He started researching and stumbled upon an alarming statistic. 95% of men stop taking care of themselves after the age of 25. They lose their edge, surrendering to comfort and stagnation. It was the great filter, a silent test that separated those who would thrive from those who would coast through life. Gohan didn't want to be on the wrong side of that divide, so he made a decision. Fitness would be his anchor. It wasn't just about looking good. It was about reclaiming control and building discipline. The first day in the gym was humbling. He struggled to lift weights that others tossed around with ease. His muscles burned and his mind whispered, "Why bother? You're too far behind." But Gohan pushed through. Each rep, each drop of sweat felt like a small victory. He wasn't just lifting weights. He was lifting himself out of doubt and indecision. Over time, the gym became more than a physical space. It was a daily ritual, a reminder that progress isn't flashy or immediate. It's earned through consistent effort. As the weeks passed, he noticed a change. His reflection in the mirror was leaner, stronger, but that wasn't the most significant shift. It was the way he carried himself. His posture improved, his handshake firmer, his voice steadier. Gohan wasn't bragging about his progress. He didn't need to. Quiet confidence was beginning to take root, built on the solid foundation of discipline and self-respect. This was just the start, but Gohan realized something profound. Confidence doesn't come from what others see. It comes from knowing you're doing the hard work day after day, even when no one is watching. Fitness was his anchor, but the lessons extended far beyond the gym. Part 3. Mastering the Mind. The gym had given Gohan a sense of stability, but it wasn't enough. He could feel the void in his mind, the nagging insecurity that made him hesitate in conversations, stumble over his words, and avoid social situations altogether. One evening, as he stared at the ceiling after another long workout, a thought crept into his mind. What good is strength if I don't know how to use it in the world? Frustrated, he picked up his phone and scrolled through recommendations. A book caught his eye. Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. He laughed to himself. A Roman emperor? What does a guy like that know about my life? But something told him to give it a shot. The next morning, he sat at his small desk, flipping through the pages. One passage stopped him cold. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Gohan closed the book and stared out the window. Power over my mind, he whispered. That's what I'm missing. I've been trying to change everything around me, but maybe I just need to change how I see it. Over the next few weeks, Gohan dove deeper into the world of philosophy. He picked up The 48 Laws of Power by Robert Greene after seeing it recommended in a YouTube video. He wasn't interested in manipulation, he just wanted to understand people better. As he read, he started noticing patterns in the behavior of those around him. People are like puzzles, he told himself one day after a conversation with a coworker. Once you know the pieces, you don't feel so intimidated anymore. He began experimenting. In small interactions, he practiced holding eye contact longer, asking questions instead of retreating into silence, and letting his voice carry more weight. At first it felt awkward, but over time something clicked. One night he looked at himself in the mirror and said aloud, "Why did I think everyone else had it figured out? They're just as lost as I am." The changes were small, but he could feel them growing. His confidence wasn't loud or boastful, it was quiet and deliberate, built on the foundation of understanding himself and the world. I don't need to shout to be heard, he thought. I just need to know what I'm saying and mean it. With every interaction, every book, and every quiet moment of reflection, Gohan felt the pieces falling into place. The quiet confidence he'd once envied in others was now starting to take root in him. Part 4. The Flow State. Gohan stood at the gym, staring at the barbell in front of him. His mind raced with thoughts of form, reps, and the soreness he'd feel tomorrow. Just lift, he muttered, but his hesitation lingered. The weight suddenly seemed heavier than it should. The noise in his head felt overwhelming. But then, a memory surfaced, something he'd read in Musashi's The Book of Five Rings. When the mind is not fixed on itself, it becomes natural and flows like water. What does that even mean, he had wondered at the time. Now, gripping the barbell, it finally clicked. Stop thinking, just do. Taking a deep breath, Gohan lifted the weight, his body moving instinctively. For the first time, the chatter in his head quieted, replaced by the rhythm of his breathing and the tension in his muscles. It wasn't easy, but it felt natural. Later, while studying, he noticed the same pattern. He'd spend minutes scrolling through his notes, wondering where to start, only to waste more time overthinking. But now, inspired by Musashi and Taoist teachings, he tried a different approach. He set a timer for 30 minutes, picked one small topic, and began reading. At first, his mind fought back, wanting to check his phone or think about what he'd tackle next. But as the minutes passed, something shifted. His focus deepened. and the words on the page seemed to flow into his mind without resistance. This is it, Gohan thought. This is the flow they talk about. He started applying this mindset to everything, his workouts, his studies, and even his YouTube channel. By breaking tasks into smaller, focused sessions and letting go of perfectionism, he found that progress didn't have to be a grind. Taoist philosophy reinforced this realization. The way is effortless, not because it is easy, but because it aligns with nature. When Gohan stopped forcing himself and began working with his natural rhythm, everything became smoother. Weeks later, he looked back and realized something profound. Quiet confidence wasn't something you chased. It wasn't about loud declarations or forced bravado. It grew naturally day by day as a byproduct of focused effort and flowing action. Standing in front of the mirror, Gohan didn't see a finished product, but for the first time, he saw progress, and that was enough. Part 5. The Ego Trap. Weeks into his journey, Gohan began noticing changes. His posture improved, his speech flowed more naturally, and people started listening when he spoke. Confidence was quietly taking root, but with progress came a new subtle challenge: ego. It first crept in one evening as Gohan scrolled through his recommended videos on YouTube. He saw a podcast titled Building Wealth Through Simple Habits. Intrigued, he hovered over the thumbnail. Then he noticed the low view count, and a voice in his head whispered, "What could I learn from this? If it was worth watching, more people would have seen it." For a moment, Gohan closed the tab, but the unease lingered. Sitting back, he recalled Musashi's words, "Think lightly of yourself and deeply of the world." "What am I doing?" he muttered. "Am I really so far ahead that I can't learn from someone else's experience?" Gohan reopened the podcast, clicked play, and within minutes was furiously taking notes. The host, though relatively unknown, shared insights that filled gaps in Gohan's knowledge, offering perspectives he'd never considered. It hit him then. Progress stops the moment you let your ego block the flow of new ideas. Musashi himself had spoken of this trap, warning that pride blinds even the most skilled warriors. The lesson stayed with Gohan. Whether it was a book with mixed reviews, a quiet mentor others overlooked, or even criticism from someone less experienced, he forced himself to stay open. One day, during a particularly challenging workout, he reflected aloud, "Confidence isn't about thinking you know it all. It's about knowing you'll never stop learning." This humility became a core part of his routine. He stopped comparing himself to others, not because he felt inferior or superior, but because he understood that everyone was at a different stage of their journey. He absorbed wisdom wherever it appeared, from unexpected podcasts to the words of strangers. Ego, Gohan realized, wasn't a sign of strength but a weakness in disguise. By letting it go, he allowed his growth to continue unimpeded. In quiet humility, Gohan found a deeper kind of confidence, one that didn't need validation, comparison, or applause. It simply existed, steady and unshakable. With his quiet confidence, Gohan kept moving forward. He continued to show up at the gym, refining his strength. His studies in philosophy and human nature deepened his understanding, shaping not only his mind but the way he connected with others. His YouTube channel grew steadily, not from a need for validation, but because his message resonated with the authenticity of someone who had lived through the struggle. Over time, Gohan's quiet confidence radiated through every aspect of his life. He no longer compared himself to others. He walked his own path, unbothered by external noise. He found fulfillment in the process, knowing that each step he took, no matter how small, was part of a greater transformation. Quiet confidence isn't something you're born with. It's earned in the trenches of effort, in the silence of work that no one else sees. Gohan didn't just change his life, he changed how he saw himself. And in that change, the world changed with him. In the end, we all are Gohan.